When my uncle died, no one cried. Not a single tear ran down a cheek, not a single word of sorrow left anyone's lips. Everyone was thinking just one thing: what did he leave us? He was a millionaire, secretive, and damn smart. He lived alone his whole life in a house that resembled more a museum of puzzles than a home. Collections of books, antique clocks, safes, locks, boxes that hadn't been opened for years. And he guarded it all himself, as if he wasn't protecting money, but a secret more powerful than any state mystery. When we gathered at the notary's office, I expected formality. Just to hear who gets what. But instead, a video was played. Old, like it was filmed on a camera from the early 2000s. There he was, Uncle Leon, with that half-smile he always wore when he knew something no one else did. And he said, "All your lives you argued about who was closer to me. Who deserved more. Who was worthy. Well, none of you. But maybe one of you will be the exception. My money, my house, everything I own, will go to the one who solves a riddle. One chance. One winner. The rest can keep tearing each other apart, as always." And then, on the screen, a phrase appeared. "My secret is hidden where time doesn't move, and memory lives in glass. Find the key in the shadow of the past, and you'll find the answer." The room froze. You could hear someone's fingers trembling in the silence. A minute later, everyone moved. And the nightmare began. They lost their minds. My family, people I'd known since childhood, turned into predators. Aunt Linda immediately hired a lawyer to challenge the will. My father drove to my uncle's house and literally started smashing the furniture. My cousins whispered in corners, formed alliances, exchanged theories. One hired a private detective, another, a former cryptographer. I saw them rifling through books, breaking open antique clocks, cracking safes, ripping out pages, muttering curses. It was hell. Pure. Real. And me? I just watched. I didn't want to take part. It felt disgusting. I thought my uncle had played the cruelest joke on us. But a few days later, at night, I woke up in a cold sweat. Those words, the riddle, again and again in my mind. Where time doesn't move, memory in glass, shadow of the past. I couldn't resist. I drove to the house. Alone. In complete darkness. I didn't want the money, I wanted to understand. My uncle's library was like a temple. Silence, the scent of old pages, the soft ticking of a clock somewhere far off. And then I noticed one clock. Strange. It wasn't ticking. A glass case. No hands. No movement. I took it off the wall. And I saw, on the back, a tiny crack, an almost invisible slit. I opened it. There was a flash drive inside. Small. Gray. Unmarked. I drove home. Plugged it in. My hands were shaking. On the screen, my uncle again. He smiled, like he knew I'd be watching at that exact moment. "If you're seeing this, congratulations. You're one of the few capable of thinking. Not shouting, not demanding, not accusing. Thinking. Everything I have is yours. Because you didn't become a hunter for money. You became a seeker of truth. The others? Let them keep digging the hole they're burying themselves in." I froze. I didn't feel joy or relief. Just emptiness. I realized, this was a trap. Not for the one who won. But for those who lost themselves. The next morning I went with the notary, showed the video, the flash drive, the location. Everything was confirmed legally. And then the family found out. And they exploded. I was hit with a flood, accusations, shouting, threats, curses. Cousin Josh said I was a thief. Aunt Linda made a Facebook post saying I faked the video. My father just walked away without a word. And you know what's the scariest part? I didn't feel guilt. I felt shame. Not for myself, for them. They showed their true faces. They didn't care about riddles, didn't care about uncle, didn't care about memory. They cared about money. Dirty, crinkling, empty pieces of paper they were ready to sell their honor for. A month has passed. I'm alone. With millions. In an empty house full of shadows. And silence that rings in your ears. Sometimes I sit in the library, in that same chair uncle used to sit in. I look at the clock. Listen to the creak of the floorboards in the quiet. And I think, how much pain must someone endure to test their family with a riddle? I don't spend the money. I barely go outside. I started a foundation. Helping children who love puzzles, like my uncle did. I named it after him. It's the only thing I can do to preserve some humanity in his memory. And you know, I don't feel like I won. I was just the last one who didn't rush into battle. The others lost long before it began. Uncle used to say. True value isn't in what you receive, but in who you become along the way. They became beasts. I became the mirror that showed them what they were. That's the price of truth.